Brian Caskey, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Come back, Roger. All right, well, I think we're ready to go. I'd like to call this meeting to order. If everyone will stand and join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, council has their agenda before them. Are there any changes or additions to the agenda or a motion to approve?
I make a motion to approve the agenda.
All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Any announcements this evening?
I just want to make an announcement to people who are watching on Zoom or Facebook. We do not have a camera this evening, so you will be viewing Mr. Caskey from the Northeast.
Brian, you're the star. Okay, is there any public comment? None received. No? Okay. All right, we have a special guest with us tonight that we want to recognize. Mr. Richard Hayes has served the town of Mills River on the Board of Adjustment since February of 2004. That might be a record. And Roger tells us you were part of the incorporation, the initial incorporation committee group. So we want to recognize you for your service. We have a plaque for you. I'll put my mask on.
Frank, is that I just want to appreciate all that you've done for us, whether during the incorporation effort, serving on the committees, is that I appreciate all that.
We appreciate all the time your husband dedicated to the town.
So Richard, that's our big ceremony. Welcome to stay. Welcome to go. I'm sorry. I said that's our big ceremony. You're welcome to hang around for the meeting, or if you've got somewhere you'd like to go. All right.
Thank you, Mr. Hayes, for your service.
Okay, to the consent agenda. Is there a motion that we approve?
I'll make the motion. We approve the consent agenda.
I'll second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Regular agenda. First up is item A, budget amendments for fiscal year 2020-2021.
Due to the success of your tax collections and the efforts of your wonderful tax collector, payments to Mills River Fire and Rescue have exceeded this year's budget already. So in order to remain in compliance, we need to do a budget amendment. And I am proposing we move some of the funds from, what happened to this page? From capital outlay that we're not spending on the right property right now, and move it up to the fire department. The amount was right in front of me. Hang on. Well, if I can find it. There, I got it. We're moving 75,000.
I make a motion that we approve what Sue said.
So you are approving ordinance 210104.
Fill in the blank, Sue.
2101.
I will second.
Okay. All those in favor of approving budget amendment 210104, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. No. You said aye. Okay. Thank you, Sue. Okay, next on the agenda is the third quarter financial update.
You have you had a sheet in your package, copy of the financial dashboard. I'm giving you an updated one where I've amended one item. On your expenditures, the budget for streets and highways has gone from 15,000 to 50,000, and the budget for capital outlay went from 759,000 to 724 to reflect the budget amendment we did in March to allow for spending for your Butler Bridge guardrail project. Anyway, this is end of your third quarter, and sales and utilities sales tax revenues have exceeded our budget by 13%. And property tax collections have exceeded the budget by over 5%. So your revenues are very strong. Other revenue items over budget include permits and fees and your picnic shelter park rental fees. Also, the final reimbursement has been received on the CARES Act funds. Expenditures are still as we would have expected for the end of the third quarter. Fire is the only one over budget, again, due to the property tax collections and because of motor vehicle tax collections, which is at 90% of its budget already. Tax collections and economic development expenditures are one-time payments made earlier in the year, so they're near the end of their budget, but we do not anticipate any further expenditures in that area. Your excuse me, your cash distributions are centered mainly at North Carolina Capital Management Trust, as interest rates continue to remain at an all-time low. No predictions are showing any movement of those rates in the near future. I've been pulling funds out of CDs because the banks just aren't giving enough to make it worth the paper. Fund balance commitments have not really changed since December. The work is progressing on the vehicle charging station, and a $5,000 payment has been made towards the bike ped planning grant engineering. Any questions?
Sue, do you or someone else kind of look and see what the interest rates are floating around out there? Is that the reason I'm asking is that, remember Jimmy?
Mm-hmm.
Jimmy was all the time circulating to see what, to see if he could get a better interest rate, over at A versus B.
Always, particularly when they're, excuse me, when a CD matures. I don't just roll it over at the same bank. I check, but fewer and fewer banks are willing to take public funds because of the, they have to collateralize it and hold security, and there's a lot of paperwork they have to do. So they'll either give you a reduced rate to what they might give the general public, or they will just refuse to take it. Council's also restricted me to a local, work with local banks. So I have interpreted that to mean 3 counties in order to make it easier. I'm still limited to probably 6 or 7 banks.
Thank you.
Anybody else have questions for Sue? Thanks for putting this together, Sue. It's always so neat and charty.
You're welcome.
Okay, next on the agenda is our budget work session for fiscal year 2021-2022.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to pull up a PowerPoint real quickly, really more of a guide for the discussion, not so much as a true presentation. Give me just one moment to do that, then we'll get started.
Then, Daniel, while you're
Yeah.
pulling it up, is that, did the Methodist Church, is that, I know that we appropriated some money. Did they come back with the application and everything's good? Was that?
We're not giving money to a church, but that nonprofit.
I don't recall seeing the check. Do you, Randy? No, I do not recall seeing that check. So I would say that no, we've not received the application if Daniel doesn't remember getting it, because she would have turned it into him.
I'll follow up with them tomorrow. Brian Caskey, can you see the presentation?
I can. Thank you, Daniel.
Okay, thanks. Okay. So this evening, we're going to talk about the upcoming fiscal year 2021, 2022. We'll just take a quick look at the budget calendar, recap some things that are worth discussing in terms of the town services. And then we're going to jump into the discussion on the various projects and policy discussions that relate to the budget. And then we'll talk about next steps as far as the remainder of the budget process, adoption, and so forth. So again, this is a quick reminder. There are some statutes and state law that dictate a few dates on the calendar about how we develop municipal budgets, and those are on the screen now. We started back in January officially with the visioning session, and then the next step formally in the state law is having all departmental budgets submitted to the manager by April 30th. The budget presentation is due by June 1st of this year. We have it scheduled for May 13th. And then we'll have a public hearing in June, and then reserving June 24th for adoption. And if there are still questions at that point, we have until July 1st to get it adopted for the next year. So this is basically what I just said, but in a different form. You can see what we've completed so far. Tonight, April 8th, we're doing a workshop, budget presentation in a couple of weeks, and then the Finance Committee will take a look at it. Then the public hearings in June, and then adoption by the end of the month. So again, just mostly for the benefit of the public, Mills River provides fire protection, law enforcement, planning, and street lighting are its official town services. Although we provide parks and recreation as a very popular service, it's just not part of the charter. And then the new one that we're looking at this year is street maintenance. That would be in terms of the PAL bill program that we've talked a little bit about. So we've got some guidance on the state on how to move forward with that. So we'll be getting a letter put together for the mayor to sign once you all have reviewed it, a letter of intent to enter the program, and then we'll get started on all the paperwork and reporting requirements for that, so that we can begin receiving funds in October of this year. Okay, so now we're going to move into the discussion. Really the point of this evening. We'll first start with nonprofits, and I've separated nonprofits and economic development. The nonprofits are the 501c3s that came to the meeting in March. Economic development are the Henderson County Partnership, as well as AgHC. I'll talk a little bit about personnel, and then some community development projects that we talked a little bit about last year. And then we'll finish up with our guided discussion with capital investments, looking at next year. And then there's also some time at the end to talk a little bit about the American Rescue Plan, and then just brainstorming any ideas that council might have for consideration. So we'll start with nonprofits. Smart Start Housing Assistance, they came to the budget the council meeting on March 11th to present their applications for funding. Smart Start did apply last year and was awarded $3,000 for their kindergarten transition program. They are hoping to expand that this year at Mills River Elementary School again, and they're requesting $5,000. The Housing Assistance Corporation, again, attended, and their request is for $10,000 to help low-income clients with health and safety repairs to their properties. And they have specifically 7 clients in Mills River that they will be helping with this funding. And of course, the Mills River Farm Market came and was provided funding that evening. And then we just mentioned the Mills River Life Enrichment Center was provided $500. And I'll follow up with them to get their paperwork in so we can get their money to them. Any questions about either of these? Really just these two, Smart Start and Housing Assistance.
Now, is that what you have on the screen is only for Mills River?
Yes.
Did you reach out to Marlo?
Yes. I've not heard back from the principal yet, but I have reached
Okay.
out to he and the vice principal.
So is that, I don't want the public to think that this is going to both schools.
Sure. That's
So-
a good point.
So is that, we need to change that to maybe Mills River.
Yeah, I'll make that clear in the budget presentation and in the budget document if it is council's desire to fund it. Any other questions about either of these two? We did speak with some other nonprofits, but they decided not to submit applications. But I think they will be next year. So moving on to the economic development side, we have the annual request from AgHC for $15,000. That remains unchanged. Henderson County Partnership for Economic Development is requesting an additional $5,000 for its economic development operations. And then they're also requesting again this year $25,000 for the Economic Investment Fund. And for this is very similar, but they're distinct funds. The Economic Investment Fund is a 501c3 with the intention of securing properties for due diligence purposes while they're working with clients. And then the other $20,000 is their request that they make every year. This year it's increased by $5,000. And I have copies of that request if you'd like to read it again.
So it's my understanding, well, first of all, and I said this last year, we need to treat the agribusiness the same as a partnership.
Sure.
Now, I am not for this economic investment fund because all that they're going to do is stick it in the bank. And so if you go back to the other nonprofits, they're actually going to use that money. Well, I don't want the taxpayer money be giving to an entity just to stick into the bank.
Sure.
So is that we either treat, now the good thing about Mark Williams is that he has never, and he said this in the visioning thing, I am not asking for any increase.
Right.
So I'm fine with the agribusiness. Is that I'm against the economic investment fund because we've got probably 85, 95% of the industrial land in Mills River. Plus we give incentives. We got a low tax rate. So I'm against the economic investment fund. I'm also would like to see the partnership is that each year they just keep coming back, want more and more money. Well, so I'd like to see the $15,000 for the partnership, the same as the agribusiness, and doing away with people just putting our money in the bank.
Sure.
And just letting it sit there.
I'm gonna have to agree with Roger on the Economic Investment Fund. I have never seen how that investment would benefit Mills River at all. And in my time on council, that seems to be the opinion of everyone who's considered this, is that, you know, it would benefit other parts of the county, but not necessarily Mills River. So we'd be paying in an awful lot of money to benefit Henderson County. And I don't know if that's a wise use of our taxpayers' money. As far as the partnership asking for $5,000 more, I'm okay with that part of it, but I don't want to be kicking in for that EIF at all.
For what it's worth, from staff perspective, I'm lukewarm to the Economic Investment Fund for the reasons that have already been mentioned. It may benefit Mills River, it may not. You know, it could be used in another part of the county. So it seems to be, just gauging from the reactions, that this was scratch this one.
Yeah, I agree. It's
Okay.
It would definitely benefit other parts of the county more so than it would Mills River. To Roger's point, it was we've got most of the industrial land in the county and low tax rate. We've got plenty in the game. Exactly. So, and as far as the equal, I like the equalness on the economic development and the ag business. I mean, I'd be willing to kick the ag up to the same amount as the economic development. I think they could use it. I think they do a good job. So it's just my 2 cents.
I guess my rub is that since Mark Williams is not asking for any more money,
Mm-hmm.
and so I guess prior history is that we've always tried to keep them the same.
Mm-hmm.
So is that the partnership is asking for 20,000, and you know, is that if you go back to the philosophy of trying to keep them the same, is that you got somebody that's not asking for any more money. Why is, I mean, is that if I walk in and ask for $5, is that don't give me 10 because somebody else is getting 10.
Right.
So is that I'd like to see the agribusiness stay the same since they're not requesting any more money. I'd like to see the partnership brought down to 15,000 and just do away with the Economic Investment Fund. Is that I agree with Brian Caskey, is that because we've got the property, let me rephrase that, because we've got willing landowners,
Mm-hmm.
because we give incentives, because we try to keep our tax rate low, that ought to be enough incentive for industry to come to Mills River.
I think I agree with everyone that we definitely, I don't see the advantage of having the Economic Investment Fund for Mills River. And I agree. I think I'd rather see us drop the partnership down to 15,000 to match the agribusiness.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
And I can't put the button to turn it down at work. So I have to keep pushing it further away. So that's why
Yeah.
I'm getting the acronym, because I've pushed it over to you.
Okay.
So that,
It's hurting my.
what's that? That's okay. Yeah. The next topic on the agenda here is personnel, and first on the list is in the Parks and Recreation Department. We're requesting funding for a full-time programmer position. This is something we had actually planned to present last year, However, considering the unknowns, frankly, about COVID-19, we were hesitant to even hire someone because we weren't sure what would be allowed to happen or not. And so this is in response to the support we've received in both the comprehensive plan as well as the Parks and Recreation master plan to start providing programming. An example of this, or special events as well, an example of this could be like the Party in the Park is a special event. The Santa Tour that we did last year would be considered a special event. So this is what this person would do for the town. So we'll be requesting this in the budget at your presentation in May. Any questions about that?
Do you have a list of any new programming that we're looking at adding as a part of this position? Or, you know, the reason why I know we've handled that existingly with our existing staff.
Mm-hmm.
So for adding a position, I'm concerned or looking to know what new programs we're talking about adding,
Right.
and then if there's any expenses with those new programs.
Sure. Yeah, and we can get you that information. But for example, in terms of events, movies in the park, I think would be a good example. We could either rent or buy a screen and purchase the rights to show those movies for a period of time. Down the road, fireworks could be something that we would consider. That's a pretty expensive endeavor, but that is something we could consider down the road. So I'll speak with Nicole and get you some more information on some more specifics on events and programming that we could provide and some estimated costs for that.
With all this virus stuff going on now, is that I think that we need to keep this programmer in the back of our mind, but is that maybe some of the other council members don't know, but before this virus hit, is that the library done a lot of, what do you call them, Sue?
Oh yeah, they do a lot of programming.
Yeah, yoga.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's funded out of the Friends of the Mills River Library. And so they've got a budget for that. And there's a guy had snakes in here one time. And Sue, go ahead. You probably know more about this than I do.
A lot of those programs, occasionally a program is funded by the Friends of the Library, but the Henderson County Library System is doing a lot of the programming. They're in this room a lot. They're running out of space. And the type of things Daniel is talking about are grander scale, hopefully to reach all residents.
Is that the programmer thing? I think we need to keep this in the back of our mind, and hopefully all this virus stuff will be gone and people can get back to normal and so forth. Now, the only thing that bothers me is that if we put this programmer in the budget,
Mm-hmm.
somebody will go out and hire this programmer. That's what bothers me. So I'd just like to keep it in the back of the council's mind. Yes, at some point in time, I agree that we need a programmer.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that right now or the first half of the fiscal year is the right time.
Okay.
And Daniel, if I might, your next item is calling for a part-time person. So maybe whenever you go forward with this, it's just a suggestion. Maybe you could, lump some jobs together, because really and truly a programmer for the programs that we're talking about offering really doesn't look like a full-time position to me.
Right.
So maybe code enforcement officer / programmer might be somebody to fill the gaps in all areas, might be something that we might be a little more receptive of.
Sure.
Me, certainly. I'm just talking about myself. So.
Yeah, and I don't want you to think that movies in the park and the Santa Tour are the only events. So those are just examples. And I'll speak with Nicole and we can get you more information and she can speak in greater detail about what that person would be doing. Anything else on that?
Yeah, I would I would appreciate that, Daniel. Just hearing some more about what this person would be doing. One thing that I'd like to just remind everybody is that with the American Rescue Plan money that we've got coming, there's an opportunity there, I think, to take our parks plan to the next level and possibly fully fund everything we want to do very quickly. Depending on what else qualifies. You know, one of the things we've talked about is broadband and things like that. But if we take the park to the next level in a way that, you know, happens faster than what we anticipate, we may need this person, you know, second half of the fiscal year. So I do think taking a sort of dragging our feet just a little bit, taking a cautious approach to this is the way to go. But I'd like to keep in mind that we might keep somebody like this very busy with, you know, leading tours in the back of the park and getting kids familiar with some of the trails back there and things like that. So it may be that we need this person sooner or later, sooner rather than later. I'll correct myself there, but those are my thoughts on it. And the zoning person, I think, you know, very quickly we're going to need them. So.
Okay, well, that's a good segue into the zoning position. We talked about this, I believe it was at your last meeting, with regards to the noise ordinance and the enforcement of that. And so what we're planning for right now is a part-time position that would enforce the noise ordinance and help keep an eye on the street lights that the town's paying for, as well as provide additional security in the park, because our part-time guys typically go home in the evenings, the park rangers, I mean, at dark, but we do have people roll through the park after dark sometimes, and it would be nice to have an extra set of eyes out there. And this would be a part-time person scheduled for about 18 hours a week. If we go above that, then we would have to provide them benefits like health insurance and dental and vision, those sorts of things. And so I think 1,000 hours is a reasonable amount, because I suspect that in the wintertime they might not be as busy. And so might not need to work that full 18 hours a week. But that's how we would fund that position. And that would be the purpose of that position, would be additional enforcement specifically related to noise.
So Daniel, does that mean that this person would not be writing permits and dealing with nuisance type stuff, mostly noise, streetlights and park security?
I could see them being involved a little bit in nuisance complaints, but more so as a backup to the zoning administrator, in the sense that they could follow up on complaints. If someone calls and said, I took care of my situation, this person can go out there and do an inspection and verify whether or not that in fact had been completed. But there's just,
Because this is a lot of after hour or after dark, after business hours.
Right, and so that's exactly right. So we were thinking that this person would basically start working at 5 o'clock and work till maybe 11 o'clock in the evening, even though the noise ordinance kicks in at 9 o'clock. We would like to have someone stick around for at least another hour or two to make sure there's no other ongoing complaints. And in the downtime, again, they would be in the park. They could be in the building preparing reports, preparing citations, things of that nature.
So Daniel, on the noise ordinance and for it, is that I'm semi okay with this, but is that I think your council talked about is that I don't want this person going out at 9 o'clock at night, going to Roger's house because his radio's too loud. So is he going to have a deputy with him? Well, is that the point I'm making is that if he's coming to Roger's house, then he may just drive up. And he may say, oh, it's just Roger.
Yeah.
Or he may drive up to Randy's house and say, I need to take a deputy with me. So he calls for a deputy. And I think that if I remember correctly, the noise thing is way down on their list. So he may be sitting on standby,
Right.
for maybe 2 hours.
Right.
So that kind of concerns me a little bit.
Mhm.
So Daniel,
Yeah,
I'm sorry,
Go ahead.
do you envision this person dealing more with the business related noise complaints that we might see after hours, and perhaps not be dealing with the residential type stuff in the evening?
I do think, based on the complaints that we've received, that the majority of their time would be spent dealing with businesses. But I don't think it would be unreasonable to expect that they would have to go out to a residence at some point. And that's a very good point, Roger. We talked a little bit about that, having a deputy present if they have to go to a certain area in town. And I don't have a good answer for that right now, other than it would have to be a judgment call based on the situation at hand.
Well, if they did go out to someone's house, Roger's house, would it be to just observe and say, and document that it's, that there's actually noise coming from there? And exactly. Yeah. So
Right.
they won't technically be an enforcement person. They'll just be somebody to document that it is occurring.
Well, they would be an enforcement officer so that they have the authority to issue citations and things of that nature, but they wouldn't necessarily have to go knock on the door. No.
Exactly. That's what I'm getting.
At that time, right?
What's that?
They're not necessarily serving the citation. They can hear it, and then the next day
Right.
it's typed up and served.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, based on
Your
the
manager,
ordinance, it's if it can be heard, I think at the property line of the complaining address, and is unreasonable, that the officer can go out there and listen and confirm that, and then part of their downtime when they're in between complaints, they could be writing the reports on that. And so, yes, they wouldn't necessarily have to go out and knock on a front door.
Like I said, is that I'm all in favor of this.
Mm-hmm.
Is that if we can just work out the odds and ends,
Mm-hmm.
and so going back to Randy's point and your point, so if Roger's playing his music too loud, so the guy drives up, he's at the property line,
Mm-hmm.
he says, "Oh, this is too loud."
Mm-hmm.
Well, so my music just keeps on going.
Mm-hmm.
So even if he has a deputy, is that I can still play my music
Right.
until I hear from the town
Mm-hmm.
2-3 days later.
Mm-hmm.
Is that fair?
Yes, that is fair.
Well, he could, I mean, the guy could drive our enforcement officer could drive there,
Mm-hmm.
note that it's too loud.
Mm-hmm.
He could then contact the sheriff's department and say, "Hey,
Yes.
I have a person at this resident. Their music is too loud. I'll handle the citation part, but whenever you get free, have a deputy come by and tell them." And then they could just handle that and they're out of it.
Exactly.
So the problem would be resolved in time,
Mm-hmm.
Well,
but then we could handle the citation later.
Right.
well, is that you're right, Brian? And so that's what I was getting at. Is that so? If Joe drives up, and so he's out there in the middle of the road, and so how does he document that my music is too loud? Which is the first question.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say that it's blaring. So he calls the deputy.
Mm-hmm. So
the deputy comes, let's say 10 minutes or 2 hours later.
Right.
So how, as a property owner, how am I going to know right then to turn my music down?
Again, it's a little bit of a judgment call on behalf of the enforcement officer. If it seems like if they're comfortable walking up to a front door and knocking on it, they could do that. But I think more to Brian's point, if the enforcement officer shows up and there's a complaint and they would like to have a deputy there to help make contact with the individual, they can do that. And whether or not the music is still going when the deputy rolls up is irrelevant at that point, because it was a violation when the officer got there. He would just need to wait for that deputy for that additional support to go actually speak with the homeowner. So we'll work out the details a little bit more on this one and come back to you with more information.
Could you mock up, when you come up with the more details, like what a schedule would look like? Because I'm concerned with limited to 18 hours, and I understand that restriction.
Yeah.
It's just if you break it down by 7 days a week or something, that's only like 2 hours. it gets real narrow time window. So I'm curious what that would look like.
That's a good point. What I had in mind when I said that was Thursday, Friday, and Saturday nights is when they would be working the majority of their time. But again, I'll come up with some options.
So I would imagine, Daniel, that I think I'm reading the room correctly. What we want to avoid is any kind of unnecessary hostile confrontations, with this person and let's say a particular landowner or somebody who, in a residential capacity. I can't imagine that going out to Bold Rock and saying, hey, could you guys turn it down just a little bit would cause any kind of a confrontation. But going out to somebody's house where there's a party going on could create a situation like that. So just as long as it's spelled out in that person's job description and you guys thought this out carefully, I think that's the piece that I would really want to be very cautious about, is not sending this person out and causing a situation to escalate. Just be honest about it.
Brian Kimbley, you brought up a good point that I'd like some feedback on, if we can. Would you prefer to have someone here like 5 days a week, or would you feel comfortable focusing on what we expect to be the busier times, like the weekends?
I don't know that I'm either way on that. I guess my concern is if we're limiting to 18 hours, everybody's pretty much for this. Is one part-time position enough, right, to handle the amount of time that they would need? And I look at, if we're looking at 9 o'clock, is the 9 or 10?
9 on the weekdays.
Okay. So whatever the magical hour for the shut-off time is, if you do 1 hour before and 1 hour after, that's 3 hours. So then if you times that times 7, that's 21 hours. So I'm okay if we pick and choose what we do and we rotate the schedule so that there's not a developed pattern to it, so that people know what the pattern is. I just want to make sure that, and I agree with you. I think in the summertime, maybe it's a 2-person job in the summertime, and in the wintertime, it's a 1-person job. So that's my only thing is make sure that we have some idea of what that plan looks like, so that, we don't get 3 weeks into it and then, they figured it out and they're playing music on Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays as loud as they want to.
So, right. Okay.
That's my only thing.
That's a good point, Brian, because there's been a lot of complaints from a entity off, Banner Farm that have been in the middle of the week and have been not on the weekend hours. So I just keep that in mind. That's a good point.
So I know that you're still working out the details, but how would my neighbor call the town at 10 o'clock at night because Roger's playing his music too loud?
We would have a separate town cell phone for that person to carry with a dedicated number for that purpose. And we would publish that, obviously. And I don't know how we would do this, but I'm sure we can call the sheriff's office and say, hey, if you get complaints in Mills River, call Joe to town. I assume that's a thing, right?
They could do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll let you work out the details. How about that?
That works. And I know it would be more money, but this could be a more than 1,000 hours a year. It just means we would pay benefits at that point, which is an option, but I was trying to think of the most economical way to do this. But we'll get you more information on that one. Aside from that, no other positions proposed this year. I've got an update for you on a couple of open positions right now. I'll talk about once we finish this discussion. Community development is what we're labeling things website and branding. And the town has a very nice website right now. It doesn't provide a whole lot of functionality, both either for staff or for the public. It's very static. There's really no way to interact with it. We all staff demoed a website, I guess it was probably a couple of months ago now. And we all found it to be very user-friendly. And the thing that we really like about it is there's a lot of automation in it. So there's only so much we have to do to get things started, and then it'll automatically update calendars, update times, update links. We can put in a little box for the live stream, so you don't have to always go to Facebook. And then the other thing that is really nice about it is people can sign up for alerts. They can get email alerts, they can get text message alerts. So if they want to know about a public hearing, if they want to know about a particular topic that's being discussed, they want to know about a board meeting like Parks and Rec, whenever that agenda is published, they would get an automatic email. It would also be a good way for us to assemble packets, I think. Wasn't that the other thing that we talked about with that?
Yes, we did talk about packets. I would be able to load an agenda on the website and load separate pieces, and someone could be on the agenda and click on it and see the same piece that you're getting in your packet. And
Can
you
you
would be
do
able
that?
to get it that way as well.
Can you do that now?
No,
So you can put the agenda, let's say for a council meeting, on our website now.
it is on the website.
Right, it would be an enhanced version of what goes on the website right now.
So Daniel, what I'm envisioning is council members would be able to perhaps click an email link and be taken to a place on the website where we could download all pertinent documents that pertain to meetings, including closed sessions, things like that we would normally get, be able to do that in an electronic way.
And there's other functionality that I think could be useful. You would be able to create an account with the website, and we could give access to, say, council and staff, certain things that we wouldn't necessarily want to share with the public, like some of our policies or like personnel policies, something like that. So it's always available for someone to take a look at. And then there's, it's hard for me to describe it. I'm not a very creative thinker, but it's much more functional than what we have right now. And I hope this is, again, there's a lot of up in the air right now with the recovery funds, that this could be something that we pay for with those funding, because it's in the vein of better public engagement, more remote access to the public, to public meetings for the general public. So that's what we're proposing right now, which ties in with the branding part, which we talked about last year a little bit. And this would be basically an exercise of identifying the brand of Mills River. And we have a very nice logo right now that we've had for a long time. It's very recognizable, and that may well stay the brand of the logo of Mills River. But it may change. We may hear from the public and the boards and the citizens that Mills River has changed a little bit, and they want to recognize that in the logo. It would help us develop a color palette that we could use, like for the website, for example. And it would just be sort of an identifying part of what it, when you see it, you know it's Mills River.
So personally, I'm not for changing the logo. I'm not for the branding. So if you go back to the website, is that I look at it every now and then. So how many people are actually looking at the website?
I don't know off the top of my head, but we can find out.
Well, so is that, let's decide, is that if it's not broken, let's not fix it. Now, is that the branding, and you mentioned the logo, is that while I'm sitting here, I will not support changing the logo. And if you look in the back, is that was donated free of charge. The logo, we actually bought it. Do you remember, Sue? Was it $10? Do you remember? Just to have rights to it?
It was $10, and she didn't ever cash the check.
Is that we actually had a Mills River resident that actually designed our logo.
Sure.
And so we're all about agriculture. And if you look at the back, it's all about agriculture. Now, 20, 30 years from now, will it change? Maybe. But I think is that we need to be conscious of where we come from.
Absolutely.
And I think that the logo is a good example of where we come from.
I think the thing for the website with me, I'm okay with the website because I look at it and say, if it's something that gives more information to the public, and that's the first priority. And number two, if it's something that makes management of staff time easier versus what you're using now, then I'm for that. I know that we've become more of a user of Facebook and I'll call them third-party social medias. The more that we can do to keep our information off of third-party social media and have our own website providing the same information, then I think that's the direction we need to be headed. You know, we can't control what those third parties do in the future, and we all know what they've done in the past. So if we can have our own website where we can get that information out, then I'm all for that.
We can be independent. And as we add programming and programs and expand park services, people are going to want to know more about it and going to visit the site more.
Is it your intention to separate these two items in the budget? Daniel?
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah. And I should clarify, I know I used logo as an example. We don't have to touch the logo at all. But I do think that something we should consider doing is getting some colors. Right now it's red. Is that the only color that represent Mills River? Maybe, maybe not. But you know, for things like the website, it would be good to have a palette, you know, of reds, blues, greens, purples, whatever we think is appropriate. But we don't really have that right now, so it's hard to have a consistent theme. Like our comprehensive plan draft is written has a blue cover, which is what we were using in the presentations. Our Parks and Recreation plan has a little bit different color. It still has blue on it. And so it would just be helpful to have a little bit of consistency that we could pull from for presentations, for our banners in the park, you know, for events, something to that effect. I only use the term logo because it's easily understood and people know what we're talking about, but that does not have to change by any stretch of the imagination.
I was remembering back to the old website, you know, the one we had 3-4 years ago, and it was absolutely horrendous, difficult to use. You couldn't find anything. It was difficult to find any of the ordinances, difficult to see what council meetings were coming up. This new website has been much better, and it's been a tremendous improvement, but I'm a big believer in staying current. And the more, I guarantee you, if we went back and we looked at how many people visited that old website where you couldn't find information versus how many people are viewing the website now where you can find information, I guarantee you that the views are up. And I think that that's something that will only continue as we continue to update and make the website more user-friendly and better for people to come in and find things in a very logical way. As far as the branding goes, I mean, this is something that we've had programmed as a budget item for a couple of years now. And I'm not for changing the logo, and I'm not against changing the logo. I can refer you to a white paper that I read not so long ago on League City, Texas. And League City is a city in Texas where they're on the Gulf of Mexico, and they found out that their logo really didn't represent who they had evolved into. There's a lot of sports fishing that takes place down there, a lot of recreation, and none of that was being reflected in their logo. But they also found out that their town slogan was, League City, Texas is a great place to live, work, and play. And they had somebody come in and talk to them, and they found out that 85% of the other towns in the United States use that same exact slogan. So there was nothing setting League City apart from any other town in the United States. And what they did, I mean, in this white paper, and I can send every council member the link because it's kind of fascinating to read through this. They went through this entire exercise where they kind of like we did with the comprehensive plan and the steering committee, they started looking into what makes League City special. And they went through this exercise and they came out with a brand new color palette, and they came out with they did update their logo, and they actually have multiple logos that they use now. But they were able to market themselves really to a completely different level after they went through this exercise. So I'd love to begin the exercise and see where it takes us. At the end of the day, we wouldn't have to do anything, but I think the exercise itself would be very valuable for us. And I'd love to get Brittany Brady maybe to come in and talk to us about it before we make a decision on whether we want to strike this from the budget or whether we want to move forward. I think she'd have some good insight into what we might want to do with our branding and how she might be able to market us a little bit more forcefully going forward. So that's all I have to say about that.
2 points is that having traveled kind of extensively to Raleigh, is that people know where Mills River is. They understand the logo. Having been to the Outer Banks and a tag on the front of the vehicle, not a lot of people, but people knew where Mills River was. So with the growth in Mills River, do we really want to market ourselves? How are we going to market ourselves, even if we want to change? The second point that you brought up is that the reason that the logo is red, probably Mr. Haynes is probably one of the few people that know why the logo is red. Do you remember, Sue? It was because of Mills River School, and originally they was called the Red Devils. And if you look at Mills River Fire Department trucks, the older trucks have a picture of the Red Devil on it. So that's where the red part come from. Oh, just a little bit of it.
I appreciate the history. And again, I'm not saying it's a good or a bad logo. I'm simply saying that red's the only color we have to work with right now. And red is not the best color to use, all the time. It would be nice to have a couple of options that we could put on the website, the color of our logo on the current town website isn't red. It's that blue color.
Aren't you taking something away from Mills River from changing the color of the logo?
I'm not suggesting we change the color of the logo. I'm saying if we had some additional colors that we all agreed upon were representative of Mills River, that we could use them for things like a website or for correspondence or things of that nature. But again, the only color we have right now is red. Red's not a bad color, it's just one.
So people are finding their way to Mills River.
Mm-hmm.
Businesses, industry is finding their way to Mills River.
Right.
And I guarantee you, if you have that on the front of your vehicle and you go, is that even if you take the Mills River part out of it,
mm-hmm.
people will know where you're from.
Right.
And so is that people are proud. I know things are changing, but people are proud, including me, to be from Mills River. And so I like to see the Mills River logo out there on the front sign. I like to see, somebody in Hendersonville doing a drawing, for something,
mm-hmm.
for us, and have the Mills River logo on it. We actually got into a pickle one time with a contractor that used the Mills River logo, and we had to threaten legal action because he was not authorized to use it. So just keep that in mind.
Sure. Any other comments on the website or branding? Move on. All right, so next on the agenda is capital investment. And the series of projects you see in front of you are mostly things we've already discussed. The park shelter is the smaller shelter we talked about during visioning. The design for that is underway right now. We haven't programmed any funding at this point for actual construction. Town hall, we talked about at visioning. There was a discussion about whether we should expand where we are, build somewhere new. The one really important aspect of that was a dedicated meeting space, at least for this body and the rest of town boards. Excuse me. And then Parks and Recreation Master Plan, that's not adopted yet, so we don't want to put too much weight on it at this point, but there are some good recommendations from there that you'll see at your meeting, I believe, on the 22nd, when you'll see a full draft of that plan. So there are some good ideas that we can tackle that are what I'll call low-hanging fruit. Building maintenance, we had in last year's budget, and that's just the fresh coat of paint on the walls, replacing carpet where it needs to be replaced, that sort of thing. Really just basic maintenance. And then Mills River Valley Trail is something that we need to reprogram next year, just so that we can keep that project on the books and hopefully get started soon. I think that's it that I had on that one. Any questions, comments? I do think we need to fund this year or for next year's budget, hiring someone like an architect to come in and help us out with what kind of space needs we do have, so that we can begin to plan for whether it's an expansion or it's a new building.
I agree.
Excellent.
Is that so? So who is the contract planner?
Alan Steinbeck.
Yeah, is that I think that he said it takes what, from start to finish, 2 to 4 years.
Yeah, that's right.
So is that on the town hall thing? Is that I'm thinking 5 years into the future,
Mm-hmm.
but is that we need to start pretty soon.
Right.
So is that I'd like to propose that we set aside a 1 cent on our tax rate just for this. And I'm perfectly fine with you guys hiring a architect to come in and talk to the staff, talk to the council, talk to the library. And Daniel, is that you may even want to go to the county level, about any future library expansion. Sure. Is that this building has served us well for 15 years, give or take. Well, is that let's try to plan for another 15 or 20 years. So is that everybody that uses the space, and I'm going to rely heavily on the staff.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, because they're here every day.
Right.
And they know, says, okay, I need an outlet over here.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
I do. Yep. And that's the kind of stuff we need to figure out. All right. This one, I couldn't not include it. I know it's frustrating. We have no more information than we had 2 weeks ago when I presented this to you the first time. But with the American Rescue Plan Act, Mills River is eligible for $2.1 million. The first half of that money is expected in mid-June, and the second half would be, I believe, next June. We would have until December 31st of 2024 to spend the money. It could be used as startup costs for certain things, but I think really more importantly, it probably needs to go towards one-time expenditures. It can be used to respond to the public health emergency, including negative economic impact. That's a very broad statement. There's no other definition and no other information at this point as to what that means. It can be used to pay essential workers during the pandemic additional hourly rate for the provision of government services to the extent of the reduction in revenue. What that means is this doesn't affect Mills River, fortunately, but for those towns that have a water or sewer system or electricity system, and they were not able to, they weren't getting payments from their customers, they can use this money to refill the coffers where they need to. And then at the end there is to make necessary investments in water, sewer, or broadband infrastructure. And again, that's very broad, and there's absolutely no guidance as to what that means. So I know I don't have anything else to add to this. This is not new, but I just feel like it's important to keep in the forefront as we start to develop the budget, because this might have a significant impact. It might not, depending upon when the money is available and what the money can be used for. We feel comfortable that we will be able to use it for things like improvements to this space, like maybe a dedicated camera and a computer so we can stop using a webcam to set up for the meetings. That was eligible under the CARES Act. We found out too late to take advantage of, but that was an eligible expenditure. And they've been clear that this money is going to be no more restrictive than the CARES Act funding. So that's why I tend to believe that we could use the money for a new website if that was something the council wanted to tackle next year. So again, I say that to say that it's still out there. We have no more information. We understand the Secretary of Treasury should be releasing some guidance in May. So we hopefully could incorporate some projects into our budget. To Brian Caskey's point, health and wellness activities were included in the CARES Act, which is what we use to replace the water fountains, the touchless fixtures, and those sorts of things. That can be used for things like greenways as an avenue for traditional health and wellness activities. That would go a long way to making some progress on the Parks and Recreation plan. It's just too soon to say, too soon to tell.
I just wanted to add to that, Daniel. After our last meeting, I had a conversation with somebody at the League of Municipalities regarding item D, specifically broadband infrastructure. And I mentioned to them that, of course, in the state of North Carolina, it's thanks to the wisdom of our General Assembly, it is illegal for municipalities to cut their own deals with internet providers. So we could not go out right now and bring in Morris Broadband or whoever to run fiber out and do last mile projects to extend internet to people who need it because it's illegal for us to do that. They have hired a lobbyist, and they are also working with the federal government as well as the state government to try to change that. So I do expect that we're going to get some more guidance fairly quickly on internet infrastructure and how we might be able to expand that, because we know that there are an awful lot of people who need it. As far as one of the things that we're all aware of is that in South Mills River, there are areas where there is no cell phone service at all. And so people cannot call 911, they cannot utilize their cell phones, and it's a real problem out there. My recollection when this came up last time, we even talked to the county about partnering with them to build a tower out there, is that the problem at its very root is finding a carrier to service that tower. Now, I don't know if that's changed or not, but as we go forward and we keep considering, how to spend this money, because let's face it, unlike most situations, where you go into a budget and you want to have money left over, right? This money, we want to spend it all. We don't want to leave a single dime left on the table, because if we do, it just goes back to the federal government. So this is a situation where we've got a real opportunity to change the dynamic and to really help people in Mills River. So I just wanted to mention that and say that hopefully we'll get some better guidance very soon on item D.
Any other questions about the American Rescue Plan?
No, that's on the LGCCA agenda,
Yep.
but again, not a lot of answers, just I guess a lot of talking.
Yeah.
I'll add one comment. I was at a conference today, the North Carolina Government Financial Officers Association and the League of Municipalities did do a presentation on the American Rescue Plan. And probably the most important thing I heard was that we should watch what the state starts planning with their money so that we don't do something that they could pay for.
And Brian Caskey brought up a good point, and so did you, Sue, is that the broadband thing plus the cellular thing is that there's no way that we can afford that, even if the General Assembly says it's okay. So I hope the county's listening, because is that one of the few times I will ever say this, is that partnering with the county might be a good thing to pool some of our money with them to work on a cell tower, work on the broadband and such, things like that.
And that's a very good point.
That's a very good point, Roger. And I'll just add that in my conversation with this person I spoke to at the League of Municipalities, I mentioned to her that we were part of the West Engine project with Land to Sky. And she was very interested in that and very interested in hearing how we have partnered with other municipalities to extend broadband. And I said, look, we're probably talking 4 years out, maybe 5 years out before we could do that last mile kind of stuff that we've been planning to do. And I said, is there any way that as a group, collectively, we could band together and all of us agree to spend a certain amount of this American Rescue Plan money on the West Engine project and kick it into a higher gear? And she said that she was very interested in that, and that she was going to present that to some folks there and then get back to us. So I think leveraging partnerships and the power of collaborating with other groups is going to be really important. So that's a great point, Roger. Thank you.
I think that the county is going to be pretty receptive for partnering on this broadband thing. Just had a little word with somebody about that, but and I realized the time frame for using this money is going to be much longer than it was with the CARES Act. So, and we don't want to overlook something like we gave a lot of money back from the CARES Act that we could have got a video system and all we didn't know about. Right. So, and Brian Caskey said something pretty important a minute ago. We want to use every bit of this money. Absolutely. Because it is already out the door, and it's money that's just going to go back to federal government if we don't use it. So we need to plan for this, and we need to make sure that we get the biggest bang for our buck for the citizens of Mills River. So, and I'll say again, I think the county will be pretty receptive on partnering with us.
Excellent.
Brian, do you know about the pilot program that's going on in Swain County? Brian Caskey, sorry.
Swain County. I may have heard of that. Refresh my memory.
About the dishes is that North Carolina has a pilot program that deals with the Outer Banks. It's in the Piedmont, plus it's in the western part, and Swain County was picked. And so it's part of this. Who's that Musk guy?
Elon Musk.
Elon Musk.
Who, yes. Is that he is actually financing this, putting in low-level satellites. So whenever I read the article, I pictured something like HughesNet, which I don't like. But is that they interviewed this lady down on the Outer Banks. She's a school teacher, and she was getting, because it was wireless, is that she was getting like triple or quadruple the speed of broadband. So have you heard anything about that?
I have read about it. I know right now it is like, as you mentioned, it's a pilot program. And in fact, it is a co-op type program where you or I or anybody could buy into this program with Elon Musk, and the name of it just flew out of my head. I don't remember what it's called exactly, but you're exactly right. It uses satellites and I think some point-to-point architecture as well. But if you're willing to invest $300 right now, you're guaranteed to get access to the service when it goes live. And I think it's going to cost people $60 a month or something like that. So it is fairly reasonable, and it's quite fast. So that's something interesting as well that we would definitely want to keep an eye on. But I'm not sure how far out that is. So.
Never mind.
Okay. So that's that slide. So this one is, what did we miss? We've tried to gather everything that we've heard over the last year, really, from various discussions, visioning sessions, just conversation we've picked up on in the community. Want to know if there's anything that we did not discuss tonight that you would like us to look into, provide some numbers for, include in the budget. All right. Yeah. Which is another good segue into the next steps. The budget presentation is scheduled for May 13th. And then the Finance Committee will review the budget that was presented on the 13th. They'll do it on the 20th. And we tentatively have the public hearing scheduled for June 10th. And then adoption scheduled for June 24th. So there's a few more opportunities to discuss this. And that's all that we have.
Okay. Any other questions? All right, moving to staff updates. Sue, what do you have?
I don't have much, but Councilman Caskey did ask me to do a project where I'm compiling some information on how other towns deal with their municipality. Deal with their committees and boards. So I've sent some questions out, and you'll see that in June when you have your discussion. Other than that, an update to your calendar that's on the back of your agenda. Finance Committee moved to May 20th so they can review and consider possibly a recommendation on the budget.
Okay. And from Arlie, tax collector.
I just wanted to say a few words about collections this year, and the fact that we were 105% over budget, and our collection rate at the end of the month was 98.38%, which was better than last year. This is done with no enforced collections. I've done no bank attachments. I've done no foreclosures. I've done no wage attachments. I've had conversations with Daniel about this, and I felt that under the circumstances with the pandemic, to actually go out and do that would be cruel, basically. So, and I wanted you guys to know this in case you get any kind of feedback from the public, that this is all voluntary people. I've sent out a delinquent letter, which is required by the state. I sent out a delinquent statement in March. I'm going to have to advertise delinquents in April. So far, it's going to be the fewest number of properties that I've done in the last few years. The people in Mills River have just stepped up. I sat down and identified, out of those delinquent properties, how many of them were primary residences or primary businesses. And there's this huge list of people. I don't feel like, unless you direct me to do so, that we should go after them and try and make them pay. Obviously, if they could pay, they probably would pay. And next year, those taxes will be there and maybe the economy will be better and we can actually do some enforced collections. But I just thought you guys needed to know that.
Do you think offering different options this year helped? The
I think
online and the
yeah,
payment
I think
booklet?
that helped a lot. I think that helped a lot. And I have more people who have budgeted their tax bills and are paying 12 times a year. Instead, I've got a lot of payment plans. Yeah, I think that helped a lot. And I think the stimulus money from the federal government helped a lot too. But just wanted to let you know that.
Thank you. All right, and Nicole is on vacation. Hope she's having fun. So town manager.
Just a couple things. Last night, the Comprehensive Plan Steering Committee met and recommended approval of the comprehensive plan. So there were a couple of comments about grammar and some misspellings. We fixed those today, and we sent them to the planning board along with the future vision land use map for their consideration at their April 20th meeting. We're very proud of that. The committee had a lot of good feedback along the way. It's very good public involvement, so you'll be seeing that soon. The recreation master plan is also in its final stages, going through and edits and those sorts of things. So you'll see that in a couple of weeks. You may have seen the charging stations are installed now. They came out this week and knocked that out with the good weather. We've got 2 of them in. They're not quite functional yet. We're trying to get the network issue figured out with the internet, but they should be functional in the next few days. We do have a couple new hires to report. You all know that Joey Bryson is leaving us as a park ranger. We've got a new hire beginning, I believe, the 15th of April. And then we have a new zoning administrator coming on board May 10th. So we're very excited about that. And then you all were kind of talking about, but I'll just say this publicly, that Senate Bill 349 or House Bill 401 basically implements statewide residential zoning standards, which could prove problematic for Mills River. Basically anything that's allowed, any district in which residential is allowed, which in Mills River is everything except general business or industrial. Anywhere single family is allowed, you could have a duplex, a triplex, a quadplex, or a townhouse. The bill doesn't get into density calculations, but one would assume if they're doing this to allow more units where otherwise it would just be one, that density would be superseded by the state law, but that's unclear at this point. But that could have some very real impacts for Mills River, considering our rural nature and desire to keep that, because you'd be able to do basically any of those types of developments by right, anywhere you have access to public water or sewer. There's also a bill floating around right now, Senate Bill 455, which places a cap on civil penalties. We've talked a little bit about this with the noise ordinance. This caps them at $50 and removes the ability of the town to enforce anything as a criminal misdemeanor. Very rarely is that ever utilized in jurisdictions across the state, but it's always been an option for people to encourage enforcement. But this bill would remove that capability for towns to do that. And again, put a cap on penalties at $50.
What's our current penalty?
It starts at $50.
Starts at 50.
But then it goes up
to.
It goes up to 100, and I believe, I don't know off the top of my head, but it accumulates after
50.
that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And then with the noise ordinance, I think we set specific fees, I believe, which are higher than $50.
Be able to accumulate at that point?
I don't believe so. The language is not crystal clear, but it states that the civil penalties will be capped at $50 and people will be issued an infraction, I think, is what it calls it.
Anything else?
I don't think so.
All right, council comments?
I do have one.
Go ahead.
That's all right. I just wanted to clarify something that Sue said. And at our last meeting, she volunteered to look at some of the other municipalities around us and to give us some information on what they were doing with their committees, the committees which advise their town councils or their city councils. And I thought that was a good idea. So I approached her about possibly doing that for the benefit of council. But I want to make clear that I did ask her to get permission from Daniel, because as a council member, it is unethical and in fact illegal for me to give her a task and insist that she do it. So, you know, the only person on town staff that we have authority over is Daniel. And so I just want to make that clear that I'm not giving her chores and things to do. But I do believe that she'll do a great job with this, and that we will benefit from her efforts.
My apologies, Brian. I didn't mention that, but I do have Daniel's approval.
Good. I just want to make sure everybody knows I'm not giving you jobs to do. You do such a great job with everything you do already that I would never give you more work. Thank you.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Brian, thanks for logging on from Beantown.
My pleasure. Thanks so much, guys.